Hello folks, my name's Greg Shockley. For those of you who don't know what Supershow is, Supershow, it is the world's first unpredictable card game. It is created by the folks at SRG Universe, and it's a game that myself and most of the folks that you'll find in Facebook's Supershow discussion group play. So that's who I intend this video for. You may see this posted up on YouTube or somewhere else, or it may get shared out to you. If you get an opportunity, definitely check the game out, or even reach out to somebody who is in the Supershow discussion group if you can. Set up a demo. We'd love to take an opportunity and play with you and teach you how to play the game. Alright, so moving on. You can see up here in the corner I have the competitor card for Varius. Varius is a very underplayed, underappreciated competitor in the game, I feel. I don't see a lot of people playing him, and he is one of our starter set competitors. That may be why. Folks may think, hey, this guy's in a starter, so he's not anything serious. But Varius, like many of the other starter competitors, is very good. Just because he comes with a starter deck doesn't mean that you can't make adjustments, add, remove cards, build a deck to really play. Right out of the box, any starter is competitive. We've seen that time and again at conventions. Folks top cut and make it late into the runs all the time. I think somebody even had a championship run at one point with a starter deck. So a lot of these competitors can be. I mean, bear in mind, this is the world's first unpredictable card game, and a lot of it is in the dice. You never know what's going to happen. So we had a deck tech the other day by Dom and Edo, and this is not a rebuttal to them in any way, but their deck was a standard deck build, and really looking at the competitor, this guy is somebody who's really going to make you pay for stopping his cards. And one of the places that he might shine the most, in my view, is what we refer to as a 6-stop challenge. That is a game stipulation where you only are allowed to carry a total of 6 stop cards in your deck. So what that does is it allows Varius to play extremely aggressive. He's got a phenomenal stat line for anybody who plays aggressive. He's got high power, high strike, high grapple. One of the places that he lacks a little bit is his ability in stopping strikes. His submission is that first low stat at 7, and technique is the lowest stat. But that aside, for being able to carry and use cards that have aggressive play to them, most of those cards will have a high power, high grapple, or sometimes even a high strike skill requirement on them. So looking at the fact that your opponent may only have 6 stops in their deck, they're definitely going to be focusing on stopping some of your aggressive follow-ups and on your finishes 100%. So in that format, Varius doesn't have to carry a whole lot of stops, but he can really himself make his opponent pay for using the few stops they do have. So that's what this build is a look at, is how could Varius play a little more aggressive with like a 6-stop challenge? How can you build him in that format? So a few key things we want to look at right here. First thing is you have to bear in mind that a lot of your stops at 19 to 21, we refer to those as the C1 stop ones, they're going to require an additional card or cards in your opponent's play area before they're actually active. Those cards always say, if your opponent has another strike, you can stop a strike. And the same goes for grapple, submission. Some of those say if your opponent has 2 others. So those are a little counterintuitive to a gimmick like Varius's that removes cards from play. Again, his gimmick is when your opponent stops your follow-up or your finish, you choose one of their cards in play and discard it. a large majority of the time, you're going to want to do that with their follow-ups just to slow them down, prevent them from getting a finish in play. So you're looking at removing a card. Say I remove my opponent's follow-up that's a grapple, or I remove a lead that's given my bonus like a stat boost for my opponent, and it's a grapple. My opponent goes to play a grapple finish. Now I have a stop in my hand that's no longer active because I didn't leave that other card out there. So those are definitely not going to be in this deck build. My second major point here is when you're facing an opponent and you give them the option of letting a card hit that's going to remove one of their cards in play, or stopping it and removing a card for gimmick, there's definitely benefits for your opponent there to play the stop. Such cards would be things like Lockdown Hold, or which Varius can't play, but they're similar cards. I think there's a strike version of that. Even a card like Spear that would make them randomly bury a card from hand and then discard one from play. So the benefits for your opponent stopping your card and letting the gimmick remove one is that, one, they keep you from putting a card in play. Anytime they let you put a card in play, knowing they have a limited number of stops, you're getting closer to being able to play that finish. It allows them to basically get that stop card in play themselves on the board, and if you remove another card from play using gimmick, they still have a card out there. Or if you choose the stop card, they've sacrificed it to save the one that's out there. So a lot of times when they've got that option, that's going to kind of weigh in their mind of, I don't want this guy to get a card out, or I don't want to lose the one I have, and I can always now throw a second card with that stop. Bear in mind too, that a lot of stops, as C2C here points out, a lot of those are going to have additional effects that your opponent's going to see that as being beneficial. If their stop forces you to bury cards or allows them to recur cards, that's going to be something beneficial that they're going to instantly look at and say, hey, this is another reason for me to play this. And so right there in 2C, they're going to see, in their minds that this is an okay thing to do. Yeah, his gimmick's going to remove a card, but if I'm going to be in that damned if you do, damned if you don't situation, it's not a true, even 50-50 situation. There is a point at which playing that stop is going to have benefits over not playing it. And the third point to think about when you're doing a build like this with Varius is that anytime you're going to play stops and other maybe non-aggressive cards, ones that are going to build up to something, in a follow-up slot, that's going to allow your opponent to get the most out of their stops against your other follow-ups. If I play one card that's not aggressive and I have another, say a strike follow-up, and I have another one that I really want to hit, and I intend to play it later, I'm not tempting my opponent to play a stop against the first one. If it's something that's if I play it as a stop on their turn, of course they can't stop it. And there's also the thought of me playing one that doesn't really do a whole lot. My opponent's not going to feel threatened. Then when I do need to get that aggressive card out there, they're going to stop that. So you really want to balance it out as much as possible in a 6-stop challenge with Varius, and try to make sure as many of your follow-ups are as aggressive as possible. That way you're forcing your opponent to use those stops, or really making them pay for not using them. Some folks won't carry follow-up stops in their deck, and they'll really focus on the finishes only in this format. All right, so let's look first at what we put in here at 1 through 12. These are your leads. So the first thing we've got, we're starting up with Wind Up. So this is going to let you get a little extra draw power. So when you're rolling strike, you're drawing a card. We put Suplex Slam Headbreaker Drop in the deck at number 2. And so you'll see below it here, number 8, I have Tornado Chin Takedown. And that's the real reason that's in there, is when you get to a point where you have very few cards in play, being able to put 2 cards in back to back to be able to get that additional finish out there is going to make your opponent pay. And even though it's, it's a lower number card, that Tornado Chin Takedown is going to be a finish, and it's going to count for your gimmick and allow you to remove your opponent's cards from play. The number 3 slot, I chose to go with the clutch onto opponent, because if we go back and we look, Varius's number 7 is his submission. And that's right there in the middle. You've got 3 skills higher than it, 2 below that. So if you can bump that to an 8, now you're going to have 4 dice rolls, 50% or more than 50% of the rolls, that you're going to be bumping or beating, because you're going to be on that high side. So instead of having 2 dice rolls you beat, 1 you bump on, you're getting this one just a little higher, increasing your chances of winning some of the rolls. A lot of folks don't run these cards at 1 through 3, but honestly, even a simple gimmick boosting your 6, 7, and 8 works for competitors like Snake Pit that, everybody knows how dangerous he is. Why not go ahead and add at least one of those in here to help out a little bit in this format? Now, at number 4, I'm running Snap Kick, and I know some folks are going to disagree with me here. The reason I'm running Snap Kick is, in this format, it's going to be so hard to keep the board clear of all of your opponent's cards that there's no sense really trying to run Apocalypse here and trying to force the issue and clear the board. You might as well go ahead and run the stop that allows a draw, allows you more options. It's going to allow your opponent to draw, but that's fine. These 3, I'm actually running the Snap Kick, Super Hip Toss, and the double armbar, I believe. All 3 of those are going to allow that draw, so you're more likely to play those early on just to stunt your opponent a little bit, slow them down getting the follow-up in play, and you're getting extra draw in hand. Yes, it's going to benefit them with the draw, but the key is that you're getting a draw out of it. All right, so the next thing, or I'm sorry, I numbered those wrong. Those are 4, 5, and 6. So at 7, I have 2 sheep. So 2 sheep is going to let you flip a few cards out, look at your discard, choose, you're going to choose 3 after you've flipped 3 cards, and then your opponent assigns where they go. 1 stays in discard, 1 gets buried, 1 goes in your hand. This kind of creates a damned if you do, damned if you don't situation sometimes for your opponent, where you're giving them cards and giving them the worst choices possible, where no matter what they give you, they're putting themselves in danger. And I like having that a little bit. It teases and messes with your opponent a little bit. And sometimes they'll put really dangerous cards on the bottom of your deck. Later on, that may come back to kind of bite them in the butt a little bit, because you may get that card back late game after you've worked your way through. Of course, there's that Tornado Chinlock I was mentioning. No stat boost or anything with it, just a very quick, simple finish just to have in there. And again, even having that finish there, that is a way to clear a board. If you hit that and your opponent breaks out, you're clearing the board the same as you would with an Apocalypse anyway. We've got Split Finger Lock here. That's just a good utilitarian card to be able to shuffle some cards back. And then we're looking at Charging Headbutt. Get a boost to your turn roll for each strike. Counts itself. You're going to be getting cards in play because of the game format and both players having so few stops. Why not take advantage of that? Now, I changed it up here with the Grapple and put Taunting Sheep in, because occasionally you run against a competitor, somebody like Booker Mania, where it doesn't pay to boost your turn roll. sometimes you end up playing at somebody where it's better to lower theirs. So I just threw that as an option. And then just matching that number 10 with the 12 here, threw in the side chin lock to keep that boost to turn roll, put the win for submission there. All right, so your follow-ups. This is where things start getting complicated, okay? This is where this deck is really going to kind of mess with your opponent's head. They're going to be trying to figure out what's going on. So I have Duck One, Take One at number 13. Now this card is going to be a lead if your opponent or you, anybody, played a stop on the last turn. So that allows you to quickly get a follow-up if a stop's been played, even by your opponent previously. If your opponent stops one of your strikes and this card's in discard, it comes back to your hand. So it's a free recursion of sorts, unless somebody has a gimmick that prevents that. Then I'm running 7 seals at the 14 slot. Varius does have the 9 strike to be able to run this, and high power to where it's going to be effective against anybody who has less than a 10 power. This is the only, I think, really non-aggressive follow-up in the deck, and it's just because of a card later on that I felt like needed to still have this as the 6th stop. All right, so we have double arm lock. It's a good way to flip a few cards, throw a card back on top of the deck. This is to kind of get around some of the gimmicks that prevent you from putting cards straight to hand. I threw Big Boot in there. Again, we're looking at how many strikes we can get in play and being able to boost turn roll, boost our draw power. Running Gut Wrench and Abdominal Stretch. Again, more cards for being able to try to kind of recur cards without necessarily going straight to hand. We threw in Knee Smash here. And now Knee Smash is a little bit different. It wasn't one that I originally intended to put in here, but changed it up and put that one in there. Then we've got Full Nelson Slam. Here, let me zoom these in here where you can see them a little bit better. Let's see what these cards are here, if it'll let me zoom. Alright, so we've got Knee Smash here. Bring that to the front for you. So, if you have fewer cards in your hand than your opponent, it's also going to be a lead. Again, this is another way to get a follow-up out quick and dirty, that you can get it out there without necessarily having to have leads in play. And with our Full Nelson Slam, we are going to have the same sort of scenario, except this one's going to be based off the number of cards in play. And instead of drawing like the Knee Smash did, this one's going to let you shuffle a card back. So this is a sneaky recursion, getting a card back in the deck, and potentially having that lead follow-up. Now at 21, we're running the Boss Arm Breaker, and this is pretty much the same as the Knee Smash. Drawing a card, if you have fewer in your hand, it also gets to be a lead. You're probably starting to see a little bit of a trend here, getting those cards as leads, as follow-ups. We're also looking at setting up the ladder, flipping several cards out, getting a boost of +1 to finish rolls for any strikes, getting to add a strike back. Then ran Lariat Takedown. Granted, this is only going to flip a single card as opposed to the 4 that get flipped with set up the ladder, but you get to shuffle 2 back and draw 2. So again, we're looking at trying to avoid anybody who is stopping us from putting cards straight to hand. Or early game, you may play this with nothing in your discard or very little in your discard just to get a draw 2. Late game, if you have flipped a lot of cards out or your discard's getting full, you may not want to flip any more out, or even if you put a card on top of deck for some reason. You don't want to be doing a whole lot of flipping after that, so we looked at running Nerve Hold, which is similar to the Lariat Takedown, but it doesn't flip beforehand. It just shuffles 2 cards in and draws 2. Again, it can be used early game to draw additional cards, or late game, it can be used for that recursion to get cards back into deck and back into hand. Now, our last point that we're going to look at, I'm going to say, and I don't even know if you can see all of this where I've blown it up. Let's bring it back down here where you can see it. So there was the last few I talked about, where we had the set up the ladder, the lariat takedown, and the nerf hold. All right, so the last we've got here is our 25 through 27, and then our finishes. Now, of course, we're going to try to run as many of the stop any's really as we can. So we've got drop kick, and we've got the double armbar in there. Just makes sense being able to stop any grapple or strike. There's really no extra bonuses to those finishes. They don't draw cards or make your opponent bury or do anything else. But you'll notice at 26 I threw Schoolboy in there. The reason we did that was, again, we can afford to. We can play aggressive. If we're only going to carry 6 stops, we were able to throw in the 4, 5, and 6 to stop follow-ups, and then to stop a submission, such as a finish submission, we already had our 7 seals in the deck, which will let us stop and recur. So here we can go ahead and throw Schoolboy in. That's another way to get a card out really fast. And again, just like the Tornado Chin takedown, this being a lead, this is going to do the exact same job that Apocalypse might do, where it might clear the board because your opponent's going to have a chance at breaking out. But this is going to let you draw a couple of cards, and it's going to kind of put your opponent on edge, because anytime Schoolboy is in a discard, somebody's always going to be looking for the recursion on that. And nobody ever wants to let anybody recur Schoolboy. It's one thing to play it once, and it starts getting nastier. You play it a second time or a third time. And I mean, by the time you get to a crowd meter 3, the -3 to the finish roll, not all finish rolls, but 8 or higher, that -3 kind of becomes negated once you hit crowd meter 3, because you end up breaking even. For the finishes, running with Varius' stock finishes here, I know a lot of folks really, really love Pure Massacre, and that's one of the reasons that we had that set up the ladder here, was so that we could recur that if we needed to straight to our hand and get a little added bonus on it. I'm not a big fan of the stat boosts on Pure Massacre. It seems a little weak to me. So that additional +1's going to help out. And it's going to allow you to discard all the cards your opponent has in play if it gets stopped. So by adding that additional +1 to the finish, what is that? That's a total of 1 to everything, and 2 to agility, and 1 to grapple. So when you look at your stats with Varius, you're going to have an 11, a 6, a 9 here, a 10 grapple, 10 strike, 8 submission. That's all in crowd meter 0. So it's going to really make your opponent want to stop that card if you've done that. If it's already been stopped and it's in the discard, and you're able to get that set up the ladder, that's going to let you yank it back again and really hit home to where your opponent's going to be struggling trying to figure out how to stop all of those. Now, the grapple, the Avenging Blade, this is really where I'm focusing my deck. It's one of the reasons that I have Tornado Chin takedown and the Suplex Slam Headbreaker drop kind of combo there, and I have Schoolboy, because I'm really pressing the issue with the grapple stops, trying to chew those out of my opponent's hand and put a lot of pressure on them. I've got the stat line really to do that. When you look, that 9 strike is going to put some pressure on some folks, where you may have some folks that normally at 9 strike would be, or even 8 strike, would be carrying a running lariat. And that's going to take that out of their hand, where that's not going to be a useful card. So only the folks who are going to have the additional stops for a grapple are going to be somebody who has a 10 strike. That's going to be really easy to identify the moment you sit down at the table. So here you've got decent stat boosts. They're not the best, but it's going to punish your opponent for each card they have in play. In a 6-stop challenge, they're going to have a lot of cards in play. So as opposed to the Pure Massacre, which is stronger in a normal singles match, in 6-stop challenge, your Avenging Blade is really going to be the card that's going to hit and really have an effect for you, because you're not going to be able to stop every card your opponent has in play. You're not going to be able to clear them all with Gimmick, and there's really no reason to struggle trying to clear them all by apocalypsing or by playing cards that clear them. You just want to use your Gimmick to set your opponent back and allow you to be aggressive. For the submission, of course, Absence of Light. This one is, this one's pretty nasty too. In this setup, bear in mind, I do have Schoolboy, and I do have the Tornado Chin Takedown here. So this one's going to give you boosts to some of your low stats, to your 5 especially, which everybody knows me knows I love boosting my lowest stat. It prevents those botch rolls. And for some reason, my lowest stat always seems to be like right next to my highest stat on the dice or something. So if I do miss that roll and I don't get the one I want, I've got a consolation prize here. But this is going to make your opponent bury cards equal to the number of finished cards in both discard piles +1. All right, so if you've got your Schoolboy in there, that's an additional finish card. If you have Tornado Chin Takedown, it is a finish if Suplex Slam Headbreaker Drop, that's a mouthful. If Suplex Slam Headbreaker Drop is in play, then your Tornado Chin Takedown will be a live, active finish, and that's going to hit your opponent. You potentially can play this card and have 4 finishes in your own discard, not to mention what your opponent has. So you're looking at your opponent bearing a lot of cards from hand with that. I don't see this one hitting as frequently as the Grapple, but to me, this is a really strong hitter, much stronger in this format than what you're going to see with the Pure Massacre. So again, kind of turns him on his head a little bit. If you're playing in a normal singles match, Pure Massacre is by and far the strongest way to go. Apocalypse is a must-have. But in this format, you'd really rather make your opponent pay for the number of cards they have in play, because they're going to be there, rather than trying to clear them. And you're going to want to make them pay for the number of finishes that are going to be in discard. And you very easily do that here by maximizing the number of grapple finishes that you have and really pressuring them to try to stop some of those. I mean, bear in mind, Schoolboy, it's a lead, but Schoolboy is also a finish. What did we say about Varius' gimmick? If they stop your follow-up or finish. Again, that includes Schoolboy, that includes Tornado Chin Takedown, if Suplex Slam Headbreaker Drop is in play. So any of those cards, even as leads, if they are a live finish when you hit them and your opponent stops them, that's going to allow you to clear one of their cards from play, and it's going to punish them for it. So now you have 3 grapple finishes that you get to really chew your opponent up with. And anybody who's building a hand size, you don't have to worry about that 4, 5, and 6 that you're allowing them to draw cards, because you're drawing cards, and you may eventually manage to hit the Absence of Light and make them bury those cards just to add a little extra salt to the wound. Anyway, hopefully it's been a little insight into my thoughts on the build for you guys and gives you some ideas on your own build. Hopefully we'll see Varius played a little bit more, both in singles and in any like the 6-stop challenges, where you guys can really punish people for stopping your cards. you don't have to follow my exact build here, but hopefully it inspires you with some of the ideas and some of the mindset behind it for any build that you make with Varius, whether it be for tag team or, for the six top challenges or for normal singles matches, or if you just want to go all out and build a TLC deck with him. I don't know. I'm just hoping that this has helped you guys out a little bit so that you can get a better understanding of how the competitor might work and what could be done to make the most of the gimmick. So everybody, stay safe out there. Practice your, social distancing, and hope to see everybody soon. Thanks for watching.